Hello and welcome back. During this video, I'm going to talk to you about the first two closing techniques in this series, which are how to close on appointments and what is called the approach close. The first closing technique is aimed at getting appointments on the telephone. If you use a telephone to get appointments, you know how frustrating and difficult it can be. Many people do not use the telephone because they've been rejected and turned down so many times. The very thought of telephoning triggers feelings of anger and frustration. As a result, they seek every other way possible to make contacts. The telephone, however, is the finest and the fastest way to get good appointments if you know how to use it properly. In approaching the prospect by telephone, the first thing that you say has to be something that breaks preoccupation, grabs attention, and points to the result or benefit of the product. Big order. But here's an example. I used to sell sales training programs. I would qualify my prospects when I called to make appointments. I found that I could get appointments 9 out of 10 times with qualified prospects calling out of the yellow pages using this very simple technique. I would call up and ask the receptionist, who is the person who makes the decisions regarding sales training in your company? She would say, well, that would be Mr. Jones. I would say, thank you. What is his first name, please? She would say, Bill Jones. Then I would ask, could I speak to Mr. Jones? I would then say, hello, Mr. Jones. This is Brian Tracy. Would you like to see a method that would enable you to increase your sales by 20 to 30% over the next 6 to 12 months? Now, if you're speaking to the right person, your opening question will be aimed at something that is relevant and important and something that the other person needs or wants. What do sales managers sit around and think about all day long? They think about increasing sales. When you say, would you like to see a system that would enable you to increase your sales by 20 to 30% over the next 6 to 12 months, the first question that the prospect asks should be, of course, what is it? That is where you go into the close for the appointment. And when you are telephoning for an appointment, you are telephoning to sell an appointment, not to sell a product. The biggest mistake you can make is to start describing your product on the telephone. The prospect will almost always say, well, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, I can't afford it, I don't have the time, and so on. All you are really selling is 10 minutes of his time. When the prospect says, what is it? You respond by saying something like, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about, and I just need about 10 minutes of your time. If the prospect asks, how much is it? This is the way you handle it. You say, Mr. Prospect, if it's not exactly what you're looking for, there's no charge at all. This is a very powerful response. Get the price issue out of the way immediately. If it's not exactly what you're looking for, it doesn't cost you anything. If the prospect then asks, well, could you tell me a little about it? I would say, well, that's exactly why I need just 10 minutes of your time. In 10 minutes, I'll be able to show you what I've got, and you can judge for yourself if it's what you're looking for. Remember that good prospects are always busy and hard to get to. Poor prospects are not busy, and they're easy to get to. If you call up somebody and you ask for an appointment and they say, sure, come on over anytime, you can be sure that the person isn't going to buy anything from you. Now, the prospect may say, well, could you tell me a little bit about it? You say, yes, I would like to, but there's something I have to show you. As soon as you say the word show, you've sidestepped the request to describe it on the telephone. If the prospect says, well, could you send me something in the mail? I would say, I would love to send it to you in the mail, but you know how bad the mail is today. Why don't I just drop it off personally sometime this afternoon? If the prospect is at all interested, he will say, oh, okay, drop it off personally sometime this afternoon. I would then ask, will you be there? If he says, yes, I'll be there, I would say, okay, about 3 o'clock, I'll be in your neighborhood. I'll drop it off personally. Don't mail information. Well, you can email information, but don't mail information. When people say, send me some information in the mail, what they're really saying is, go away, I'm not interested. When you send it to them in the mail, it usually goes right into the wastebasket. If you're going to send things in the mail, it's better that you put it in the envelope and throw it in your own wastebasket and save yourself the cost of a stamp. Sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that when we mail information, we're actually making sales. But only sales are sales, not mailing out sales information that no one reads. Instead, you ask for 10 minutes of his time. And this is the key expression. You be the judge. You decide for yourself if this is what you're looking for. You repeat, all I need is 10 minutes of your time, and you can judge for yourself. This assures him that you will only be there for a short period of time. You assure him that you will put no pressure on him. You will just show him what you've got. And if the prospect doesn't express some interest within 10 minutes, you'll be on your way. I've found that if you ask for 30 minutes, you'll have to wait for weeks, maybe forever. If you ask for 10 minutes, you can almost always be slipped in. Don't make the mistake, by the way, of using the old high-pressure salesman's trick of saying, how about 10 o'clock today or 2 o'clock tomorrow? This alternative close has been used so many times that it just insults the prospects. Instead, say something like, sometime this afternoon or maybe sometime tomorrow. What would be most convenient? Be very flexible. Sometimes the prospect will say, well, why don't you call me on Monday and we'll set up an appointment? Watch out. What you say to him is this: look, I've got my calendar right here. Do you have your calendar handy? Of course, the prospect is sitting at his desk with his calendar handy. You say, let's set up a time right now. How about 10 o'clock Monday morning? Don't allow yourself to be put off with this, call me back on Monday and we'll set up a time at that time. It's just another way of getting out of seeing you face to face. Now, the very best customers you will ever have are the ones you're going to have to fight to see the first time. They're also the ones who buy the most. When they try to put you off, when they try to avoid you by making excuses, what they're saying is that this may not be a very good prospect. Somebody is going to get to that prospect and sell that prospect, and it might as well be you. So be persistent, be polite, and be firm. Just say, all I need is 10 minutes of your time. Just 10 minutes will be enough. Give me 10 minutes and you'll be able to decide for yourself. Just sell 10 minutes. If he asks you for details about your product or service, you say, well, it's too involved to go into on the phone, but it'll just take 10 minutes and I'll show you what I've got. Sell only that 10-minute appointment. If you cannot close on telephone appointments, you can't even get to first base. So resolve to become very good on the telephone. If you're tense about using the phone, if you're nervous, it's because you've had frustrating experiences in the past. You will become more confident as you become more competent. The very best customers are the ones you're going to have to struggle to see the first time. They're the ones who could turn into the very best customers of all. Now, the next technique is called the approach close. You use this right at the beginning of the sales presentation. The purpose of the approach close is to get the prospect to make a commitment to giving you a decision at the end of the presentation rather than him saying afterwards, I have to think it over, which, as we said before, means goodbye forever. The approach close is a technique that you use when you have a product or service which is used and needed by almost everybody. Recognize that sales resistance is the highest at the beginning of the sales presentation, so this is why you need it. And the reason sales resistance is the highest is because we live in a commercial society. Someone is trying to sell us something hundreds of times every day. We see, hear, or are exposed sometimes to thousands of advertisements in a day in the form of radio, newspaper, internet, spam, television, billboard, buses, and so on. Everybody's trying to sell us something, so we have natural sales resistance from the age of probably 5 years old. Now, there's a simple and powerful way to overcome this natural resistance on the part of the customer at the beginning of the sales conversation. You simply say this: Mr. Prospect, I'm not here to sell you anything right now. All I'm going to do is show you some of the reasons why people have bought this product in the past and why they continue to buy it over the years. And all I ask you to do is look at the reasons why others have bought it and judge for yourself. You can then tell me one way or another whether or not these questions apply to you and your situation. Is that fair? I'll just show you why others have bought it, and you just tell me whether it makes sense or not to you. The person will usually agree to this proposal. What you're doing is you're offering him a deal. The deal is, I won't try to sell you if you will listen with an open mind to my presentation. The prospect usually says, okay, I'll listen with an open mind. You then go through your normal presentation. At the end of the presentation, the prospect cannot then say, well, I have to think it over. You say, Mr. Prospect, you promised you'd give me an answer one way or another. It's a very simple close. You promised you'd give me an answer one way or another. And from what you've said, it seems that this product is ideal for your situation. You can then go right through to the close. We've just covered how to close an appointment and the approach close. In the next video, I'm going to discuss the next 2 techniques in my 24 Techniques for Closing the Sale series.